hold your head back.
Open your eyes. Just
Open, there you go. Keep them open, keep them open. Come here. I'm gonna look in your eyes. Come on. Put your head back. I know. Put your head back. You're good. We got you. You're good.
Water. You're good. Clear it out. Flush it out.
Come here. Get up and come with me, all right? Come on. I'm pressed.
We are pressed.
Back up. Back up! Move! You're cowards and traitors!
Something absolutely unprecedented is happening in Minneapolis, and it's about to change everything you think you know about how America handles insurrection on our own soil. What started as protests has exploded into full-scale riots, with gang members stealing FBI weapons, federal vehicles ransacked, and the President of the United States now threatening to deploy the military to an American city for the first time in over 3 decades. But here's what the legacy media won't tell you. The people that they're calling peaceful protesters just committed acts that meet the legal definition of domestic terrorism. And Trump's response? It's not just bold, it's brilliant. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why Minneapolis has become ground zero for the most important law and order battle of our generation that will forever decide the fate of left-wing liberalism. Greetings, everyone. It is Live Stream Friday. I am your host, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, continuing to celebrate and stand up for what you did back on November of 2024. So if you want a front row seat on how you continue to change the world in ways you never even imagined, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. As always, we got a jam-packed show for you today. Our super chats are up, so feel free to send in your comments or questions. It will be my privilege to read them and answer them during this live stream. Before we dive in here, there are some stunning bombshell revelations coming out that are absolutely ripping the mask off deep state corruption. Venezuela's former intelligence chief just exposed Maduro's narco-terror network, allied with China, Iran, Russia, and Hezbollah, looting literally trillions while evading sanctions. In a direct letter to President Trump, he's alleging that corrupt U.S. politicians, diplomats, and deep state actors took millions to prop up the regime. Gang, those exact same corrupt tentacles are strangling our financial system today, manipulating fiat money and quietly draining hardworking Americans' retirement savings to bankroll their radical globalist schemes. President Trump is leading the counterattack, establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve, making America the crypto capital of the world, and opening retirement accounts to crypto. His family are major players, pouring their faith and fortunes into it because decentralized crypto is the one wealth fortress that the deep state simply cannot steal. You can take the exact same stand today with Block Trust IRA, their groundbreaking Animus AI platform has outperformed Bitcoin by over 250% since 2020, delivering the shield and growth real patriots need. Head on over to turleytalkscrypto.com right now and get a free $2,500 funding bonus when you open up your account. That's turleytalkscrypto.com to secure your family's future today. Love Block Trust IRA. I've been with them now for over a year or two. I love them. They're amazing. You'll love them too. All right. Let's talk about what's really happening in Minneapolis right now. And I want to cut to the chase here. We are seeing nothing less than the painful, agonizing death throes of liberal globalism and progressivism itself. If you wanted to see what a vicious, hate-filled, bitter, insane movement looks like in its final moments, in its death throes, you're witnessing it. You're seeing it in Minneapolis. Remember, one of the most important things to keep in mind in the midst of all this hysteria, all this delirious and ravenous frothing at the mouth rage that we're seeing, is simply we are seeing the essence of woke left-wing liberalism coming to the surface. They can't hide behind the tailored, manicured slogans about equality and equity and human rights and social justice. They can't hide behind those. They can't hide behind the cosmetic veneer of Hollywood that, by the way, is imploding as we speak. It's down 80% in its revenue. They can't hide behind the incessant shilling advocacies of legacy media that nobody watches anymore. They can't hide behind the supposedly learned lectures of college professors who are all just cultural Marxists. All of that is gone. It's all gone. What we're witnessing here is a near century-old political ideology reaching its mortality. It's experiencing its own death throes. And like what happens to, if you're watching a movie, it's like what happens to a vampire, disguises itself as some erudite aristocrat. When the sun, finally hits it, shines upon it, and it starts to reach its death throes, all of a sudden we see the demon that was always lurking beneath the surface, screaming and thrashing and gnashing its fangs. It's the same thing here. When a political movement that has been built on what is called resentment politics, a political movement based on hate and disdain, when it reaches its death throes, what it actually always was, its essence, comes to the surface in vampire-like fashion for all to see. And that's what we're seeing. That's what the entire world is seeing in Minneapolis. We are seeing what progressive liberalism always actually was coming to the surface. And we're seeing it precisely because it's being faced with its own mortality. It's being faced with its own demise. And thus its true nature, its abhorrent, loathing, repulsive nature is coming to the surface for all to see. President Trump is indeed actively and decisively destroying liberalism. And one of the most liberal cities in the nation, Minneapolis, is where liberal progressives have gone. That final battle, that hill, they have gone to die. Now, let's start with what happened the other night, because I really think this is nothing less than these zombie agitators walking into a trap they don't even realize has been set. You might have seen this, but what happened is they attacked and vandalized federal law enforcement vehicles. They tore them apart like freaking piñatas. But they didn't just smash windows and spray paint. They went full insurrection mode. So videos captured by independent journalists show crowds using tow ropes and vehicles to literally drag weapons lockers from FBI and ICE vehicles. These weren't empty containers. Inside were tactical gear, sensitive documents containing the names and addresses of federal agents, and high-powered rifles. Now, one man, a known Latin Kings gang member named Raul Gutierrez, 33 years old, was arrested after allegedly stealing FBI body armor and weaponry. And he was one among many who were arrested in that incident. And here's the key. This is the trap. All of those arrests are now being used by law enforcement as intel to uncover the entire anti-American network behind these riots and protests. Here's White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller.
But, well, I guess I'll just go back full circle and say that in Minnesota right now, the insurrectionists have come out of hiding. They're confronting our officers on the street. They're being arrested. This is a national security priority. More arrests of insurrectionists are being made every day. And each of those arrests then provides an opportunity to learn more about the network from a law enforcement and national security standpoint.
And to put a cherry on the top there, they're going to make sure that their employers know about it. The federal government is creating a federal database of every person arrested in these riots. They're listing their social media profiles. They're listing their employers. They're basically doxing them. Here's Border Czar Tom Homan.
This job and these people who want to say follow ICE, and film ICE, you know what? You can protest. They have that right. But when you cross that line, and we've proven it, if you interfere or impede or assault an ICE officer, you will be prosecuted. And one thing I'm pushing for right now, Laura, we're going to create a database. Those people that are arrested for interference, impediment, assault, we're going to make them famous. We're going to put their face on TV. We're going to let their employers in their neighborhoods, in their schools, know who these people are. Because as you said, a lot of these people, they say they're taking time off work to protest. I bet you a lot of them are calling in sick. I bet you a lot of their employers don't know what they're doing. But we're going to make sure everybody knows who they are. We're going to broadcast. They want to broadcast the ICE officer that was nearly killed all over the internet. We're going to broadcast every one of these people we arrest.
I love it. But exposing the organizational network and basically doxing these agitators, insurrectionists, and the like, it's just the beginning. Massive convoys of ICE agents and Border Patrol are flooding into Minneapolis as we speak, every single day, every single night. The full number is astonishing. Upwards of 3,000 federal agents has swarmed into that city. That's 5 times the total number of Minneapolis's feckless police force, led by that emaciated, emasculated excuse for a police chief. He's one of the few guys who stands next to their absurd mayor, Jacob Fry, and actually makes Fryboy look manly. And the federal agents are now starting to get very, very aggressive with these insurrectionists. And it's not just ICE agents. Watch Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt absolutely crush a far-left lunatic disguised as journalist in the White House briefing room. Check this out.
Earlier, you were just defending ICE agents generally, and earlier on, Secretary Nunn spoke to the media and she said, among other things, that they are doing everything correctly. 32 people died in ICE custody last year. 170 US citizens were detained by ICE, and Renee Good was shot in the head and killed by an ICE agent. How does that equate to them doing everything correctly?
Why was Renee Good unfortunately and tragically killed?
Are you asking me my opinion? Because an ICE agent acted recklessly and killed her unjustifiably.
Oh, okay. So you're a biased reporter with a left-wing opinion.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah, because you're a left-wing hack. You're not a reporter. You're posing in this room as a journalist, and it's so clear by the premise of your question. And you and the people in the media who have such biases but fake like you're a journalist, you shouldn't even be sitting in that seat. But you're pretending like you're a journalist, but you're a left-wing activist. And the question that you just raised and your answer proves your bias. You should be reporting on the facts. You should be reporting on the cases. Do you have the numbers of how many American citizens were killed at the hands of illegal aliens who ICE is trying to remove from this country? I bet you don't. I bet you didn't even read up on those stories. I bet you never even read about Laken Riley or Jocelyn Nungray or all of the innocent Americans who were killed at the hands of illegal aliens in this country. And the brave men and women of ICE are doing everything in their power to remove those heinous individuals and make our communities safer. And shame on people like you in the media who have a crooked view and have a biased view and pretend like you're a real honest journalist.
911, I'd like to report a murder. I mean, wow. Woof. That is the definition of a bitch slap. I mean, wow. Now, if you don't know, that so-called reporter that just got demolished is a fellow by the name of, I don't know how to pronounce it, Neil Stanage, or I don't know what, doesn't matter. He's from the Hill, and he is an ultra-leftist, it turns out. He is a left-wing activist disguised as a journalist, kind of like that doctor on Capitol Hill, right, the other day, who was asked point blank by Senator Josh Hawley if men could get pregnant. And this doctor, let that hit you. A freaking doctor, a certified physician, basically said, yeah. She did everything she could to try to evade answering the question directly. But in the end, she said, in effect, yeah, a man can get pregnant. Yes, 2 + 2 = 5. Okay, that is not a doctor. That is a far left woke activist exploiting the medical profession to spread cultural Marxist propaganda. And that's exactly what this nut in the White House press briefing room was doing. He's a propagandist. He's an advocate of an ideology that's known as progressive realism, more broadly as progressive realism. And it's the belief that the arc of history is bending inevitably towards a left-wing vision of social justice. So leftist progressivism becomes the ultimate standard of justice and fairness, which in effect means that every single person on the side of leftist causes and activism are by definition on the right side of history. That's why Democrats are always assumed innocent until proven guilty by the legacy media. That's how this left-wing lunatic disguised as a reporter can look at that video of Renee Good accelerating forward directly towards the ICE agent in front of the car and conclude that that ICE agent acted recklessly and killed her unjustifiably. You see, in the infested ideological mind of that radical leftist activist disguised as a reporter, the ICE agent killed her unjustifiably by definition because she's on the side of justice. That's what you've got to get. That's progressive realism. The radical ideology that believes that the arc of history inevitably bends towards a left-wing vision of social justice. Renee Good, by definition, was just. She was by definition on the right side of history, whereas that ICE agent, by definition, was on the wrong side of history. And that's what's called reporting in the legacy media. That is perhaps the single most infested institution with this ideological rot known as progressive realism. You'll notice, for example, that joke of a journalist. He will never ask, no one in the legacy media has ever asked any Democrat, Ilhan Omar, carbon copy Obama, they don't, Nancy Pelosi, they don't ask any Democrat, can you explain something for me? Why is it that you say that the assault against federal agents on January 6th was the single greatest assault on American democracy in human history? But then on January 7th, when Renee Good was killed, you're claiming that assaulting those same federal agents is actually an act of moral integrity. Can you explain that discrepancy for us? You will never hear that. You will never, ever hear them try to do gotcha questions with Democrats, because Democrats, by definition, are on the right side of history. They are innocent until proven guilty. Whereas Republicans, they're obstructionists. They are trying to obstruct history. They're on the wrong side of justice. They are by definition unjust. And therefore they are by definition guilty until proven innocent, and good luck doing that. But unfortunately, as both the protesters and the propaganda press are beginning to realize, what they're really facing in all of this is their own mortality. The mortality of their radical left-wing ideology that does appear to be meeting its end in Minneapolis. But first, gang, if you are joining us, our super chats are up, so feel free to send in your comments and questions. I'll be happy to answer them here on our live stream. Also, I am very excited to announce that our good friend Mark Wilburn of Neos Capital is hosting a free 5-day online training called the Zero to Trading Bootcamp. This is January 19th to 23rd. This is amazing stuff. Mark is a stock market expert. I've worked with Mark. He's incredible. He's a stock market expert whose picks have led to returns of over 200%. I've actually seen it a bit with my own eyes. He has this knack for demystifying the stock market so everyday patriots can learn how to profit from it. So if you're looking for ways to benefit from this booming Trump economy, then click the link below or go to freeturleyticket.com to reserve your spot. Tickets are normally like $97, but Mark's agreed to open registration for free for all of you because he wants to support patriots just like you. We're living in America's golden age, and it's time to take bold moves to build the legacy we want for our families. You're going to love this. Go to freeturleyticket.com now to reserve your spot. It starts January 19th, and I think you are going to be most excited about it. The American Thinker had a very good piece out just this morning, actually, entitled "The Grievance Industrial Complex Sacrifices Its Own." And I was struck by that title because I think it really captured the dynamic that we're seeing play out in Minneapolis. We might call it the dynamic of demise. And it teases out the dynamics of why liberal progressivism appears to have finally met its end. And first and foremost, the key here is that liberal progressivism has turned into, as you see there, resentment politics or grievance politics. And that's a political movement that mobilizes support by emphasizing real or perceived injustices and resentments toward particular groups or institutions. So it is an inherently hostile, hateful, resentful politics that scapegoats a portion of the population as responsible for all social evils. That's what grievance politics is. And that is basically what liberal progressivism has turned into. Certainly it's cultural Marxist outworking. It has turned into grievance politics, where they scapegoat groups, men, whites, Christians, as responsible for every evil on the planet. So you start there, but then what you have to understand is, as liberal progressivism ended up becoming grievance politics, we can actually see why it ended up becoming grievance politics. It's not just ideology. It's not just the logical flow. Not every liberal became a practitioner of resentment or grievance politics. Bill Maher doesn't appear to be particularly among the group of the aggrieved. As a matter of fact, he's one of the biggest critics of the wokeness that comes out of this, the wokeness that's been weaponized in this grievance or resentment politics. No. It ended up moving in that direction because, first and foremost, grievance politics is a business, and a very lucrative business. In other words, follow the money. It's pretty simple. Follow the money. It's more popularly known as the grievance industry or the grievance industrial complex. And this has actually been written about extensively. Proponents of grievance politics claim to be the ones who stand up for and defend victims, the oppressed of our society. But as you all know, as we've seen with BLM, as we've seen with all this stuff, as we saw with USAID, as we saw with the Somali fraud, the reality is that grievance politics hide behind the veneer of defending the victim and the poor and the oppressed. They hide behind that veneer, all the while they enrich themselves. And we're talking to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. Now, the key here is it's not everyone. It's not the zombies on the streets. No. It's the leaders of grievance politics. It's the elites. They do little to nothing to help out anybody that they supposedly represent. And we've seen that most explicitly with the Southern Poverty Law Center of late, the SPLC, which is perhaps more than any other organization turned grievance politics into an industry. And again, a very, very lucrative industry. The SPLC, which is a bona fide racket that makes tens of millions of dollars a year smearing conservative organizations and causes. They've even had some of their own former employees come out and admit this. Their former employees have come out and said, it is a racket. This is a business model. We're there basically extorting money from people. And so, as the great economist Thomas Sowell pointed out years ago, grievance politics by definition can never be appeased. It can never, and this is what makes reparations so futile. Reparations is one of the great planks of grievance politics. You can pay all the reparations you want. The more you pay, just the more grievance you're going to get. The more reparations are going to start popping up because it's all about the money. Grievance politics, by definition, can never be appeased precisely because such appeasement goes against the business model that enriches activist elites. This is what we call the limousine liberal, the champagne socialists, run around crying racism, sexism, discrimination, ultimately in order to get a massive amount of finances reallocated into their own bank accounts. Grievance politics makes these woke liberals a lot of money. So there is never an incentive to improve or make anything better, because that would, by definition, eliminate the need for these grievance organizations. But what makes it even worse is that while all of these leaders are taking in all of this cash, what they do is they exploit the psychological weaknesses and pathologies of people to deliberately radicalize them and turn them into the foot soldiers of their grievance movement. And again, you'll notice that all the leaders in this, right? Tim Walz, Jacob Fryboy, the utterly repulsive Ilhan Omar, they are never, ever, 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 ever on any of those videos of the front lines. Ever. They're never getting tear gassed. They're never throwing up or screeching or trying to see again and pour water in their eyes to get the solution out. It's always this lunatic fringe, these psychopaths that they recruit to do the dirty business of an industry that makes them tons of money. And the result is what the Polish psychologist Andrzej Lubachevsky, we talked about him a number of times there over this week. This psychopathy ends up becoming a he called it a psycho. What did he call it? A pathocracy. I knew I would get it somewhere. It's in there. Sometimes the file cabinet gets a little stuck. Mental file cabinet. He called it psychopathy, right? So if you don't know, Andrzej Lubachevsky, I've done some videos this week on him, obviously, but it makes a lot of sense. If you, this will help you understand what's going on here. But Andrzej Lubachevsky studied leftists, particularly Marxist leftists in Europe, for 40 years, and he concluded that they were all psychopaths. Now, these are the leaders. The leaders themselves are psychopaths. And psychopaths, by definition, get their kicks on manipulating the weak and the vulnerable in ways that harm them. So they are malevolent manipulators. And one of their primary techniques is projection. They project onto others the very sins they committed. And the reason why is that enables them to admit that a crime is being committed without confessing to the crime. So they can point, there is a crime, there's a terrible crime that they're committing. They won't say that, right? Who exploits the weak and the poor and the fragile and the marginalized more than the left? What exploited it more than USAID? Nothing. So what they do is they project onto others in this manipulative, this malevolent manipulation. They project onto others the very sins they're committing, but they convince them that this scapegoat, right, as part of grievance politics, that this white male, Nazis, fascists, whatever, are the ones who are actually committing it. When in point of fact, these people that you're seeing on those streets, banging on their pots and pans and whistles and screaming and frothing at the mouth, who are they being exploited by? Who? Who's exploiting them? So Andrzej Lubachevsky basically argued that leftism is a mental disease. This is after 40 years of studying leftist leaders. They're all psychopaths. And they deliberately, malevolently manipulate others in their own causes. They're kind of like, for lack of a better term, they're like Charles Manson's. And I don't know everything about Charles Manson. I'm just going by, the narrative, as it were. But they're like Charles Manson's. They malevolently manipulate others to do their bidding, and they sit back and they get their kicks watching them do it, and often getting harmed in the process. And I think that the death of Renee Good perfectly exemplifies the psychopathy. She was a 37-year-old mother of three. She was, as I understand, she was a poet. She had been married previously twice, and recently relocated to Minneapolis. And some way she ended up getting radicalized. She and her partner, or her wife, or whatever, I don't know. They ended up getting radicalized. And she was taught by the likes of the Minneapolis and Minnesota and officials and MSNBC political class. She was taught that Trump was Hitler and the ICE agents were Nazis. Who, keep in mind, they are just enforcing the very same immigration law that was actually in place throughout the entirety of the Obama and Biden years. Trump hasn't added a single law to our immigration law. Not one. He's just enforcing it. That's it. He's not bringing in this movement and changing and revamping the entirety of the nation and its laws and so forth to usher in a Third Reich. He's not doing anything like that. He's enforcing the laws that were already there, probably passed by Democrats for all we know. But she believed, Renee Good, she believed, regardless, that that Trump is Hitler and these agents were Nazis. And she couldn't put together the fact that Nazis don't use rubber bullets. Right? Now, Nazis don't warn you to step back. Nazis don't give you several chances. She couldn't make sense of the fact that the very people who are telling her to physically assault federal agents are also the ones who claim that the physical assault of federal agents on January 6th was the single greatest assault against democracy in human history. She couldn't put that, the radicalness of the ideology that infested her imagination prevented her from thinking coherently and logically about all of this. And that's Lobachevsky's thesis. Lobachevsky's thesis is that psychopaths take advantage of the psychological and mentally weak, those people who tend towards neurosis, and they exploit them and they manipulate them to go out and effect and provoke the very societal unrest that they, from the comfort of their air-conditioned or heated, for that matter, offices, get to watch. But the key here is that all of this is intentional. The grievance industrial complex deliberately manufactures activists and martyrs from oftentimes just very well-intentioned people who are victims, but ironically, not the victims of Trump. And this complex thrives on escalation. And that's key for left-wing liberalism. Left-wing liberalism, particularly grievance politics, the more they can escalate, the more money the elites make. And so they position ordinary citizens as foot soldiers in ideological battles that many of them don't fully comprehend. They don't know. When's the last time they picked up a book, for heaven's sakes? Leaders and organizers cultivate a sense of, instead, moral urgency that compels their followers to take increasingly dangerous actions. After all, you're on the right side of history. History is with you. But in the process, these elites put them in harm's way. They don't provide for them adequate understanding of the very serious and dangerous risks or the strategic futility of their sacrifices. And what happens is that this official encouragement that we see from Walz, that we see from Fryboy, that we see from that lady married to her brother, what happens is that official encouragement from the elites, from the comfort of their own penthouses, creates a permission structure for unending escalation among these psychologically weak people. So activists go from just sitting on the sidelines going, shame, shame, to now actively getting in their cars and following ICE vehicles throughout the Twin Cities, documenting operations, and then attempting to physically disrupt arrests by federal agents, arrests of some real bad guys, rapists, murderers, human traffickers, guys assumed to be armed, who are arrested with federal agents' guns drawn. And when these frankly narcissistic nihilists who obviously don't have a life get in the way of that, insert themselves physically into that serious and potentially fatal situation, all at the cheerleading of the elites who are up in their penthouses watching with glee? You get what happened to Renee. It's inevitable. It was the predictable outcome of when political leadership encourages direct confrontation with armed law enforcement without acknowledging the mortal dangers involved. And it's an unfortunate symbol of what's happening to progressive liberalism itself. You see, what's happening in Minneapolis and around the country is very predictable. Again, there have been studies on this grievance politics pattern that always ends up dying. It always ends in its own demise. First, political leaders frame enforcement actions as existential threats requiring resistance. Nazi. Second, they mobilize followers through moral appeals while downplaying the physical risks. And then third, and this is key, when followers are killed or arrested, the leaders transform them into martyrs to justify further escalation. And that is where we are at, and that is where the movement implodes. And why does it implode? Those of you who follow the channel, you know some of the theories that we use. Why does this grievance politics pattern always end up imploding? Right? You start with mobilizing. You're on the right side of history, and then you go in there and face down these federal agent Nazis. Then some people get killed or arrested, and then, whoa, they're martyrs for the cause. Get out there and show them how committed you are. We're not going to let them die in vain. What happens? It just further escalates and escalates, and that's when the movement implodes. Why? This is the trap. What I tell you at the beginning. They're all walking into a trap they don't recognize. They're all walking into a trap, right? If you've been with us, almost an hour or so, how long we've been on, right at the beginning, I said, they're all walking into a trap. They don't get it. They obviously don't see it. They never do. I bet their leaders do. And this is part of the kicks they get being the psychopaths that they are. Watching in this malevolent manipulation of watching people being harmed in the process from being manipulated and carrying out their wicked schemes. Why is this? Why is it when they start fully escalating? Why is it that is the moment when these grievance politics movements end up imploding? It's because they can't win the battle of escalation. The escalation ladder is itself the trap. Ask every single radical movement that's ever taken on the United States federal government. Ask it. Ask anyone. It's called the escalation ladder. I mean, we talked about it yesterday. The basic gist of escalation theory is that in any conflict between combatants, and again, this is strategists have worked this out, physicists have worked this out. The basic gist of escalation theory is that in any conflict between combatants, the side that controls the highest rungs always dictates the ultimate outcome. The side that has the capabilities to escalate further than the other side always wins, by definition. So in a federal versus state showdown, in this case over immigration, Sanctuary jurisdictions like Minneapolis occupy the lowest rungs. They can refuse to cooperate. They can file lawsuits. They can tell their police to stand down when angry mobs surround ICE agents. They can stage protests. They can do all kinds of things like that. But these in the end, or they can file, civic complaints. They're all symbolic legal maneuvers that delay but do not ultimately block federal enforcement by virtue of the Supremacy Clause. The federal government, by contrast, doesn't just control the highest rungs. Again, like I said, this is a trap. They don't just control the highest rungs. The federal government commands the entire ladder. It can arrest state and local law enforcement while their own federal agents are completely immune from state and local law enforcement. It can cut off billions of dollars in federal funding. It can deploy tens of thousands of ICE and Border Patrol and tactical officers into the streets. It could federalize the National Guard, and the ultimate ace card, the federal government can send in the military, the United States military, and its full force under the Insurrection Act. That is exactly the powers and the authority that the Insurrection Act provides for the president. And that is exactly what President Trump has reminded Minneapolis of. He is explicitly threatening that he will invoke the Insurrection Act if these escalate. It's not like they're not being warned. It's not like he's not telling them, guys, I am setting a trap for you. You're not going to win this. There is no way. This is going to keep going up and up, and then at some point, I'm going to drop the hammer. And this thing ends. So bottom line, sanctuary cities and sanctuary states simply cannot climb the escalation ladder. They lack the legal authority. They lack the military capacity, and they lack the constitutional standing to even come close to matching federal force. They can only operate at the bottom, whereas the president can skip and go straight to the top. And that structural asymmetry guarantees that any prolonged confrontation ends with federal supremacy intact and local resistance crushed by the next rung. So then what happens? They escalate. They've got their martyrs now. They escalate, and then the escalation ladder kicks in. Escalation physics kicks in. What inevitably happens when the federal government cracks down hard? What inevitably happens is that the radical movement splits. It fractures between those advocating continued escalation, the kamikazes, let's do this, versus those recognizing the total futility of all the strategic dead end in it all. There's an inevitable split between those who want to continue to confront versus those who recognize that every confrontation only increases the chances of their own demise. I mean, we saw it in Japan, We saw it. You all know my wife's from Japan. I was married to Japan. I love Japan. I absolutely love Japan. But, with Fat Man, what is it? Fat Man, Little Boy? Did I get Fat? Yeah, Fat Man, Little Boy. The two nuke bombs. When they first saw the first one in Hiroshima, as I understand it, there was, okay, now we really need to take on the Americans. Now, all bets are off. I mean, now we're going to really. And then a couple of days later, Nagasaki, and it was like, holy crap, what the heck is this? And then, of course, we did a little poker face there and bluffed and said, until you fully surrender unconditionally, we're going to be dropping a bomb like this every other day or so. And that's when Japan's movement, its World War II movement, just split. You did still have some holdouts, the kamikazes, but the vast majority said, screw this. It's got to, I'd rather live and try to figure out how we can all kind of work together with this new regime than just die a futile death. So all of this is to say that the grievance industrial complex perpetuates itself through this threefold cycle, right? It gets you radicalized, puts you in harm's way, and then turns you into a martyr to escalate the radicalization and the confrontation. And then the crackdown comes. The escalation, that physics takes over and you fall. And inevitably you fracture. Some will still be all for it, but a lot of them will be like, never mind, I'm done. I didn't sign up for this. So this grievance industrial complex perpetuates this vicious cycle, but it cannot sustain itself indefinitely. Moderate supporters inevitably, inexorably begin to distance. They don't get more radicalized, they get less. And they distance themselves. And they leave then in their place only the most radical core, the most vicious, the most hate-filled, hysterical core. And what happens? The movement ends up revealing itself for what it always was. The demon lurking beneath comes to the surface. And the vast majority of the country is appalled at what they see. So Minneapolis, the choice is yours. Stand down, stop the violence, do what every single red state is doing right now as we speak. Many people don't realize that just as many illegal migrants are being forcibly deported from red states as blue states. It's just we're not seeing anything in the news about it because those federal officials or those state and local officials are cooperating. So stop the violence, let federal officers do their jobs. But in the end, those jobs are going to be done. And you'll end up finding out what happens when President Trump finally decides that enough is enough. Regardless, the storm isn't coming to Minneapolis. The storm is already there. And ICE isn't backing down. Over to you guys, over to you. I talked enough. I talked a lot. Yeah, I always say that, but then, I go and I answer your questions. But Josh, our moderator, will set up your question. Again, if you're just joining us, we have our super chats are up. And throw in one of your questions in there. I'll be happy. It'll be my honor to read them and answer your questions during this live stream. What do we got, Josh? What do we got? Robo Guy, thank you so much for the super chat. Dems are threatening another shutdown over ICE. Why doesn't Trump just invoke the Insurrection Act and the entire Democrat Party if they do? Enough playing nice. Show those seditious morons who's a boss. Yeah, I'm hearing that as well. There's a lot of we'll see what comes up from that. The Democrats were so politically damaged by the last shutdown. Again, it's just you have to remember with all of these are just PRs. These are PR statements with every interview, with every claim, every time they get in front of the camera or anytime they do a press a paper interview, they send out immediately through email a fund, an appeal for funds. So they're, it's just a business model. I wouldn't pay a lot of attention to it. But again, even if they did, the pressure for the Republicans to get rid of the to get rid of the filibuster would be overwhelming, and they would pass it. They would pass it a real budget anyway, a permanent budget anyway. So I don't think you have to worry about it. Brian, my dear friend, why do you think the president is waiting to invoke the Insurrection Act? Seems to me as if he had justification a week or more ago. We patriots get frustrated with the pace of the administration. At points, few arrests, few convictions. The deep state seems to be biding their time, and too many Republicans are helping them. Yeah, no, I get it, Brian. Yeah, and that's what a lot of people feel like. They feel like when they see some of these videos and just these rabid, frothing at the mouth, weeping and gnashing of teeth zombies harassing ICE agents. They're like, this is so demoralizing. Why are you allowing them to do it? Crack down on these guys. What's going on? And thank you for your service, Brian. You're a military guy yourself, Marine. So this. Why not just send out, invoke the Insurrection Act that enables them to provide whatever, bypass the other act, I'm forgetting it, that prevents the president from using the military on our own citizens. The Insurrection Act does allow him to do that and bypass that otherwise proscription. And so, I'm with you on it. I do think it's an escalation ladder thing. It's inevitable. I think it's going to happen. There's no way around it. And I think President Trump and Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth, they're all looking at it. And Tom Homan. Tom Homan talked about it yesterday. They're having a meeting apparently, like right now as we speak. They're having a meeting at the White House to talk about the Insurrection Act. He talked about that with Laura Ingraham last night. So and Stephen Miller's also saying, in effect, trust the plan. He said this a few days back. In 10 days, everything is going to come to light. So we'll see. So that's got to be 6 days from now or so. So it is frustrating. But here's my thing. And here's what I go back to. All right, here we are now, 9 years into this, right? Since 2016, almost 10 years since 2016. Has Trump really, in the end, has he ever disappointed us? I mean, like fundamentally so. And I think I could push everyone here to say, no, he didn't. Now, he may have done something you don't like, but I mean, like fundamentally betray us. And the answer is no, he hasn't. And so I think it's very clear when he says, we're going to, just like with Greenland, just with like Venezuela, just like with Iran, I think we're going to have to do X, Y, Z, whatever it is. Eventually X, Y, Z happens, or whatever was leading to X, Y, Z ended up getting quelled and ended up getting resolved. So I'm with you. I mean, it is frustrating, but ICE agents I've noticed are more and more pushing back. I don't know if you saw, I did a video yesterday where federal prison guards are now there. They actually have the tag. We have video of them. Federal prison guards are being deployed. So again, this is all part of the escalation ladder. So they're being deployed to Minneapolis in order to allow the ICE agents and FBI and Border Patrol to do their job, while these guys who are trained in quelling uprisings and riots, prison riots, which is literally like what we're seeing here. It's like they emptied their prisons, and we're just seeing these extreme hysteria-prone nuts out on the street. Now they're the ones kind of cracking down on them. So yeah, I mean, it's careful to. X will tend to show more provocative video, where there is a lot of doom spooging and black pilling on X, unfortunately. But I try to give a more balanced. No, it's more than that. The reason why they're getting so hysterical and escalating is because they sense they're losing. I just think the key is. So Trump is going to use it. I don't see. It's not a matter of if. It's only a matter of when. The Insurrection Act, and I think he's just biding his time in the escalation ladder. Todd, Good to hear from you, my friend. What are your thoughts on the Democrats baiting Trump to appear to be the dictator they brand him to be? They know this fight is futile, but blaming a war they create on Trump is the false flag they need to fit him to their tyrant narrative, the well-equipped oppressor against the poor, helpless, oppressed. Well, yeah, I mean, it's certainly working with the already convinced, the people who are already there. You know, Lobachevsky argued that the psychopathy tends to be the governing characteristic for left-wing sentiments. So, like that reporter that we saw confronting Caroline Leavitt, who then turned around and bitch slapped him literally. He saw the exact same video that we saw. Right? Scott Adams talked about it. We're all watching two movies on the same screen, and what he meant by that was that the hermeneutical horizon, the interpretive frame or lens by which we're all seeing the same facts are becoming increasingly discrepant. And I think just the good news is that 2024 proved that the vast majority of the country does not remember they ran against Trump as Hitler. The vast majority of the country doesn't buy. They didn't buy the left wing's J6 narrative, and they're not buying Trump as Hitler narrative. The vast majority of the country doesn't buy this. The 30 or so red states don't buy this. The vast majority of even blue states in the rural areas don't buy this. This tends to be a very particular frame, specific to our coastal elites and our cosmopolitan left. And yeah, they're going to double down on it because of the psychosis. There's no, Steve Bannon says we're in a post-persuasion era. But there's no indicator, solid indicator that I can see that they're doubling down on the frame of Trump, Hitler, ICE, Nazis, who shoot rubber bullets. There's no indicator that doubling down is persuading anybody. Case in point, we're just seeing Republican voter registration numbers continue to just crush it. I mean, they're skyrocketing. We are, Todd, I know you're in Pennsylvania. We are, probably not even a year out from Pennsylvania flipping red. For the first time in its history, more Republicans outnumber Democrats. First time. Remember, at a million voter registration advantage, Democrat advantage, just 8 years ago. So, I mean, we're not seeing, I mean, polls will come and go. And, we try to analyze polls responsibly here. But voter registration trends are a key and a very important key predictive indicator for how voters, their sentiments. And their sentiments right now is they're with law and order. We're also noticing too, we have studies that find whenever you have riots, the electorate tends to move to the right. So we saw this in the 1960s with the race riots. And remember, the 60s were supposed to be an age of idealism, left-wing idealism. And it ended in 68 with really an almost unimpeded reign of Republicans in the executive branch, two landslide elections for Nixon, 72 being the largest landslide in American electoral politics. There's a little interim there with Carter, who painted himself as, a Southern Christian conservative Democrat. Then he was booted out, and then we had 12 years of Republican rule. So, I mean, there was 20 years, and within 24 years, there was a 20-year dominance that came out of riots and social instability and destabilization, where the population turns to the right. They want law and order restored. So there you go. Their frame for Trump as Hitler is only being confirmed, but it's only being confirmed for an already, I think, far left mentality. Morning, Dr. Steve. With all the action going on around the Gulf of America, Is there anything we can do about Haiti? Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. I don't know the answer to that. We'd have, well, isn't Haiti still under at least some kind of French political, not rule, but relation? Or I'd have to think about that. I haven't even thought about that. Because you got the Dominican Republic right next to it on the same island, which is a functioning society, and Haiti, of course, is radically dysfunctional, and that's as I've been told, that's largely because of the differences between French and Spanish colonialism. Spanish colonialism was a lot more, well, just shall we say, organized and responsible for, I mean, I'm just being descriptive here, not being prescriptive. But whereas the French just didn't care, and they just seemed to loot as many countries as they could. They weren't interested in actually setting up a political order. So yeah, we'd have to look at it. That's a very, very interesting and good question. Stephen, as a Canadian, I'm amazed Trump hasn't invoked the Insurrection Act yet. Liberals up here have invoked the Emergencies Act for way less. Yes, most especially with the Freedom Convoy. I remember that. I'm assuming that's what the Emergencies Act that Trudeau imposed upon them, and freezing their bank assets and everything like that, their bank accounts. So no, I think it's an escalation. Look, again, our ICE agents are doing amazing stuff. I mean, there's been thousands upon thousands of arrests in Minneapolis alone. Arrests and many of those deportations. They're sending out planes every night of deportees that were forcibly arrested. So, originally, as I understand, this was going to be Tim Walz's, platform to the presidency. He was going to use he saw how it worked for Gavin Newsom, that when you confront Trump, your poll numbers go up. So he was going to confront Trump on the streets. He was going to mobilize the resistance and then get coronated, as it were, in 2028. Now, his whole, the Somali fraud fiasco got exposed. What is it? They're estimating $9 billion in welfare fraud. And so his career is shot. So it's all falling apart. The entire woke, liberal, progressive establishment is imploding right before our very eyes. So I don't know. I think Trump is sort of saying, let it implode. Whereas the Patriot movement in Canada and the United States, the populist movement is rising. It's growing. It's gaining strength. Remember, populist parties have grown by 400% in 15 years in Europe. It's stunning. I could still remember studying populism around 2008, 2009 at Durham University. And I could still remember reading articles saying, this stuff has got legs. They got 3%, 4%, 5% support. I remember seeing Giorgia Meloni in 2019 in Verona, Italy, give a speech when she only had about 3% support. The Brothers of Italy only had 3% support. But I remember reading a number of these scholars are saying, you better keep an eye on this stuff. This has legs. These populist movements are going to move from the fringe, and don't be surprised if they end up going mainstream. Remember, this is 2008. This is during the Obama era, the beginning of the Obama era, where everybody was popping the corks and saying, globalism, we're all socialists now, we're all liberals now. So there are a lot of scholars in the Sam Huntington tradition saying, keep an eye on these far-right populists. They are growing and growing and growing. And so I think Trump sees, I think it's very discerning. I think he sees our movement is a movement that's growing, whereas their movement is a movement that's dying and dissipating. And he may just allow it to dissipate itself. More super sticker. Thank you, sir. Very kind of you. ES Music 668. When can we expect some Golden Age guitar play? Hey, man, the music. Golden Age of guitar playing for Dr. Steve. Love the channel. Keep up the great work. You might be seeing it this year. You may. You really, really may. It's kind of, we're talking about like New Year's resolutions, right? So I've had a couple. So one was to do a little bit more after dinner reading rather than kind of like doom scroll. Not doom. I don't doom scroll, but go through Twitter and I'll never call it X. It's always going to be Twitter. It's just in my head that way. But go through social media and seeing all this sort of stuff, planning for my videos the next day. I've really tried to make the evening a time of reading some really spiritually deep literature to just stay very grounded and so forth. But another thing I've been wanting to do more, which I started to do, is pick up that guitar, dust off the strings, pick up the guitar, grow out the nails a little bit, and start playing a little bit each day. And so I've been doing that this week. And at some point, maybe I'll do a little video for you guys and show you my former life. I mean, when I say my former life, I mean, again, we're all about the revitalization of civilization here, and nothing revitalizes civilization more than music. Music it's the only form of art that was named after the gods, the muses. And there's just something about music that reveals the harmony, the cosmic harmony that we're all aspiring in some way, shape, or form to attain. It awakens the joy, the happiness, it cleanses the emotions, it purifies and sanctifies the heart. And so I need to, that's what this channel ultimately is about, is giving you that hope that we're winning and that's happening. And there's nothing wrong with throwing in a little tune every once in a while. There's an old saying, you can't argue with a song. There's just, it transcends argument. And so thank you for that little encouragement there. You may be getting that in the next few weeks. Condition base. Looters stupidly exposed warrants, so ICE is not randomly arresting Somali Sotans. That's Somali Sotans. I love that. I'm gonna use that. Somali Sotans. I have Minnesotans, Somali Sotans. Maybe it's Somali Sotans. Yeah, all right. I'll work it out behind the scenes. You're so right. And again, though, if Lobachevsky's correct, the left doesn't operate with the rational side of the mind. The left really does not operate with the mind at all. They are psychopaths, and they create pathocracies. They create societies ruled by a neurotic minority, and inevitably they fall under their own weight. Facts, reality, it's a tough thing, and they keep stepping on the rake of reality, and you're giving it a perfect example. Now they'll never see it because again they're psychopaths, but most people do, and that's so you're bringing up a phenomenal point there. Robo Guy, there are some bills introduced to try and defund or abolish ICE. Otherwise, the government shut down. You think they may pass, or is it dead on arrival? DOA ain't going anywhere. Republicans know it would be a death sentence for them to get reelected. And, of course, Trump wouldn't sign it. I don't think they're going to shut down. I mean, again, this is the threat. This is what they think. They have the leverage here. The last shutdown was such a disaster. And I don't think you're going to get the 7 senators Democrat senators who voted to open the government. They're not going to go along with another shutdown. Again, all of this in the end is just fundraising. It's part of the business model. That's it. Where they have no leverage over us, literally none. That's why they're so hysterical. They've got nothing else. If you've lost in every way imaginable, if the entire nation has rejected you as soundly as they did back in 2024, then all you do, I mean, again, we see this over and over again throughout history, is you default to destabilization. You just try to make everyone's lives as hard as possible. Maximilian, what does it mean to be Maximilian? You're too much, man. If you guys don't know, if you're new, I'm being coy with Maximilian. Maximilian always asks the deepest questions, and he forces me to draw deep from the well. So to be, well, I mean, technically, it is what's known as ontology. Ontos is the Greek word for being, and or essence. I believe that's the Latin, and being is well, this is very interesting. You could think of being in two ways. You can think of being as necessary being, necessary, and a synonym would be existence, something that or the state of existing, in a just a very flat sense. And you can think of it as necessary being, or you could think of it as contingent being. They're not the same, obviously. So you take everything in the universe, and this is forms of argument that you find all over the world: Christian, Jewish, Islamic, Confucian, Buddhist, Shinto, you name it, Hindu. Take all the things of the world, all the things of the world, a tree, a plant, a dog, a mailbox, nice random things. What they all have in common is they exist. They be, literally. They have being. But they have a particular kind of being, and that is a contingent being, where they're here today, but they can be gone tomorrow. They don't actually have to be. And the problem with contingent beings is they cannot account for their own being. They cannot account for their own existence. I can't. You can't. And even our parents can't. And our great-grandparents, and our grandparents can't, and our great-great-grandparents, and on and on and on and on. And and what we find in modern-day cosmology is, well, in all cosmology, ancient cosmologies, what we find is that even the universe itself doesn't actually have to be here. In modern-day cosmology, there is a sense that the Big Bang is stretching out the universe, and then at some point, it's all going to collapse back into pre-Bang form, as it were, or condition. So everything in our being, everything in our experience of being is contingent. And contingent beings cannot, by definition, account for their own being, because they don't actually have to be. And so if you take the totality of the cosmos and every contingent thing in the entire universe, including the universe itself, and none of it can account for its own being, then by definition, by the power of the logic of causality, by definition, every contingent thing in the universe, ultimately, including the universe itself, has to be rooted in a being that is not contingent. In other words, a necessary being. A being that always is. Being is it's you can't even call it it. So this is where Buddhists get into the idea of nothing, nirvana. A lot of people misunderstand that. When they say the ultimate state of being is nothing, they literally mean there's no thing. There's no thing anymore. Things are contingent. Things that begin and end, that have limitations and so forth. Those are that are born, that live, that die, that are constructed. Those things exist contingently. But including the universe itself, you take the sum total of all contingent things, and the only way you can account for their existence, since contingent things cannot account for their own existence, is they must be ultimately rooted in a non-contingent being, in a being that can never not be. And that in the old German, that non-contingent, infinite, eternal, necessary being that's completely set apart from all contingent things, the old German called it Gott, G-O-T-T, Gott. And of course, we get the word God from that. So and then all the great religions of the world, bottom line, when all said and done, is that they are all different reflections and manifestations, as it were, of this infinite, eternal, necessary being that contains within itself the sum total and plenitude of all possibilities, all potentialities, infinite in its life and its abundance, that is alone the necessary, logical, rational ground for any finite contingent thing. So there you go. How's that for a little Bible study there, right? I love the way the Bible begins. In the beginning, God. And it's really cool. In the beginning, being. Absolute being. So in the beginning was the Word, the Logos, the infinite, eternal being of God. All right. There you go. RT Core, oh, great and learned patriot professor. What are the odds? The government shuts down in 2 weeks. Are we expecting the same thing as October? I don't think so. Again, like I said, at this point, I don't see those 7 senators voting to shut it down. They found it futile the last time. They're going to find it even more futile now. Samuel Murray, Dr. Turley, help me understand the mind of Jacob Fry. Dude, my friend Sam, I do not know even if this man has a mind. I don't know if I could help. I cannot explain a square circle, but let's see what you get. In your opinion, does he believe that Somalians will become good progressives? 2, think that Somalians will never obtain independent power. 3, know that doom is coming but doesn't care. 4, that doom is coming but doesn't think about the future. You're like cultural archetypes. This is Hengist and Horse and King Vortigern, repetition number 1 million. Ah, wow, Sam. And you know what? I don't even know that. I don't know that Hengist and Horse. So that's just against my own Swiss cheese template here. I don't know what's in Jacob Fry's mind. I mean, he obviously is a I tend to be a follow the money guy, first and foremost. First and foremost, he's a very successful Minnesota politician. I mean, he was able to stave off the challenge from the Somalian socialist in the last election. He was able to stave off the challenges to his mayorship during the George Floyd riots that he helped instigate. So, I think he's in his 3rd term now, isn't he? So he's a very successful politician. So whatever he does seems to resonate with 50% plus one of people in Minneapolis. And in the end, I do think he seems to be a true believer in progressive realism. He really does believe that the arc of history will always bend the side of left-wing social justice. And I do think he's post-American. So he does believe, as a cultural Marxist, that America is an inherently evil country and does need to be replaced and then brought down and reshaped and revamped around his ilk's own cultural Marxist image. That's does he see the end coming? Probably not. I don't. Again, he just sees himself as part of the protected class. That's the way leftist liberals have been. That's the way they've been enculturated. You get involved in politics to become part of a class that is above reproach. That's above accountability. It's part of the deal on both for both parties, by the way. So he's just used to this notion. I just think, or he's just been, for lack of a better term, groomed with this notion that in the end, no consequences actually come to him. He doesn't get arrested. He doesn't get indicted. Nothing will happen to him. So I just think it's the combination of all those things that's created the kind of chaos that we're seeing in Minneapolis. Franz, in a world where there is no reserve currency to impose sanctions, what becomes the enforcement mechanism? Well, how is an oil tanker seized? So where there's no reserve currency to impose sanctions, what becomes the enforcement? That's actually a very good question. I'm sorry, it took me a couple of times. I don't know what the oil tanker seizing. I don't know the logistics of how to seize an oil tanker. If I knew the logistics of that, I'd be running Somali operations, I think. From the comfort of my own penthouse. Yeah, that's a very good question. What would be the forcing mechanisms? See, it seems to me it would be alliances. So in civilizational states, multipolar, great power block structures and arrangements, you could see, for example, the you could see India, Russia, and the United States team up to push back a bit on China if it was felt that China was encroaching on other civilizational spheres, just as Russia and China, and to a certain extent India, teamed up to push back on the Biden era and their attempt to economically and politically sanction Russia, and even culturally. I mean, you go and you watch any tennis tournament today, the USTA, which is very liberal. It's the most liberal sport, actually. We have studies that show tennis is the most liberal sport, but unfortunately, I love it, and I've been to a number of U.S. Open tournaments in Flushing Meadows, but if you're a Russian player like Medvedev, it's blank next to its name. They always show the flag of the person playing. Well, if I recall, it's just either blank or it's black. So they refuse to show. They basically canceled Russia culturally, economically, politically. And so Russia and China, and to a certain extent India, teamed up to push back against it, decoupled away from the West, and then it ended up mutually profiting their own spheres. So it seems to me, at least at one level, you have alliances that can end up balancing the geopolitical chessboard when you don't have a single dominant currency. And we don't anymore. We have to be honest. We don't. Russia did end up calling that bluff. Russia was able to show that you can, but you have to be the size of Russia. You have to have their commodities base, their food, their fuel reserves, and all that sort of stuff. You got to have that. I don't know if a tiny little country can do the same thing, but regardless, Russia did show that the United States' power to financially sanction another country today is far more limited than it used to be. Isel, will Minnesota arrest and try federal agent for murder? No, they can't. He has immunity under the supremacy clause. He works for the federal government. I'm in the Philly area. All of this bluster from left-wing lunatic, particularly police chiefs who are for some reason women and weird, but all of these like ours in Philly said we're going to arrest ICE agents if they step foot on. No, you'll be arrested. You'll be arrested if you do that. No, the arresting officers will be arrested. You can't arrest federal agents. No court on the planet, first of all, would let you do it, and no federal government would let you do it. No, it's an absurd. I mean, it doesn't even seem to recognize the federal structure that we have. Blastradius, Trump needs to get to the bottom on who is funding and busing in radical leftists causing this chaos. So that is apparently what's going on as we speak, and it is coming. That's what Steve Miller has said repeatedly, that they are uncovering this vast network. It does look like it has Soros's fingerprints all over it, and they're going to use racketeering laws, RICO laws, to crush it. ICE agent, rock dog, Dr. Steve. I'm black pill. Come on, ICE agent. Rock Dog, when is Pam Bondi actually going to arrest these seditious politicians of D.C. and Minnesota and the Soros crime family? Until we see them perp walked, I'm not going to believe we will see justice and things change. Am I wrong? Well, are you wrong? Yeah. Wrong is a hard. That's a strong word. I'm not going to say you're wrong. I do think it's a little myopic because there have been a lot of indictments, a lot of deep state firings. There have been a lot of people being brought to justice under the Pam Bondi Justice Department. She's won 97% of all cases against the Trump administration before the Supreme Court. I mean, it's been impressive in that sense. You're not wrong in the sense that, again, we're all experiencing delegitimation to some level. Maybe not the level like a Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson, but we all call into question the legitimacy of the powers that be in the particularly the administrative state and deep state of the government. Dan Bongino has issued a statement saying, guys, I saw it behind the scenes. The tide has totally turned. We got the FBI back. We expelled all the rot inside the FBI. The Justice Department is continuing to expel the rot in all of the in all of its wings. The New York City outlet and the Chicago outlet and Minneapolis. There's a number of Minneapolis lawyers federal justice lawyers who have resigned in Minneapolis because the police officer or the ICE agent who shot Renee Good is not being investigated or prosecuted. They're cleaning themselves out. They know they've got no future, and so they're all something's happening here. It's really impressive. But nevertheless, the trust and confidence has been so thoroughly eroded, and rightfully so. It's going to take some time for us to be trustful and confident of our government again. We're certainly trustful and confident of the Oval Office in a way we weren't for the last 4 years. But are we equally so with the Justice Department, the FBI? Well, we'll have to see. I think we all like Health and Human Services with Bobby Kennedy. We trust them now. They just did a new food pyramid or food guidelines. It's just absolutely inverted all the crap we were being told since the 1980s, 70s, and 80s. So, I mean, we trust that. So right now, I think we're at the stage of you got to earn my trust. And Pam has not earned yours. Clearly not. She has not earned yours yet. And I think you rightfully, you are entitled to that skepticism. That said, keep in mind, they did not indict Trump until about 2 to 3 years into Biden's administration. You got to keep that in mind. Law moves slow. It's just the nature of the beast. It's the way our founding fathers, both legislation and litigation, as it were, moves slow. That's why we love the presidency and what Trump has done in bringing back a full Article 2 power of the executive. That's what the founding fathers want. They knew they would need a Lincoln here or there. They needed someone. They needed to have someone in government who could move fast and swiftly and decisively and powerfully, shock and awe. But in the end, we can get rid of him in 4 years, and everything he did could be reversed, unless it goes through the long, painful process of sausage making of legislation, or it could be shot down through the process of litigation. I mean, there's all these balances of power, but the legislation and the litigation take infinitely more time than does the power of the executive branch. The power of the presidency is awesome if used rightly, and that's what Trump is doing. So keep in mind, even Biden's Justice Department didn't go after Trump until 2 or 3 years into Biden's presidency. So we're not even a full year into Trump's presidency yet. Almost 4 days we'll be there. Bert, hello, Dr. Steve. Do you think the NATO reinforcements in Greenland saved the island from Fleet Week? I mean, it is. Oh, that's so good, Bert. Yeah, I mean, what do you say? I mean, it's like, who needs comedy? Who needs, Saturday Night? Well, Saturday Night Live isn't funny anymore. It hasn't been funny in years. But who needs comedy skits when you've got NATO? I mean, it's just these guys. It's just so funny. Macron. So I don't know if you caught my video on it yesterday, but what is it now? 34 people, 34 reinforcements there to save Greenland. It's just so funny. William O'Toole, good AM, Dr. Steve. Do you think Trump is using Greenland as the catalyst to leave NATO? And would that send tremors through the EU and the rest of Europe? Great question. Dang. I didn't think of it as a catalyst. It could end up being a catalyst. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the rhino neocon scum like Mitch McConnell would be horrified by that. I don't know. He'd have to get Lindsey Graham's stamp of approval, right? The reason why you see Lindsey Graham around Trump all the time is Lindsey Graham, for right or for wrong, is the soul of the Republican Senate. If you can keep Lindsey on your side, the whole of the Republican Senate will follow you. Mitch McConnell's old news. He used to be something like that. It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Trump made it clear in 2016, several times in his first term. He hasn't said too much this time around, but certainly in his first term, he thought NATO was obsolete. He said that repeatedly. Remember, Trump actually campaigned as a Brexit candidate. He saw his election as our Brexit referendum, our breakaway from the liberal globalist order. So he campaigned on dismantling the liberal international order. He wanted to make the WTO, the IMF, the World Bank obsolete, and NATO obsolete. And he only wanted to do bilateral trade agreements, no more multilateral trade agreements enforced by international institutions. Those days were over. So he wanted to dismantle the liberal international order. He wanted to bring our troops back home. And I'm sure he would love to take them out of Europe. The European elite are just clowns at this point. They're talking tough with Russia, and then they talk tough with Greenland and send 34 troops. Everybody, Putin, Trump, they're all laughing at the bullies in Brussels, the EU. If he pulls out of NATO, Europe will have to go through a realignment, some kind of political realignment. I don't know what that'll be. I mean, there's basically two. And that is the European Parliament would be overrun by populists. And then the Parliament would function very much like a very, very weak federal system where sovereignty is returned to individual nations within Europe. So it's still there. It's used as a point of unity and deliberation, but it no longer have anywhere near the forcing mechanisms that it's had, that they've been using, fining Viktor Orban, millions of euros every day because he refuses to comply, or the way they forced out the Law and Justice Party from power in the parliament in Poland, although they came back with a revenge with Nawrocki in the presidency just a few months back. So, by the way, keep your eye on Portugal. I believe Portugal has their election this Sunday, and Chega is it looks like they're polling number one. Chega, remember when we were doing, I'm sorry, I get giddy on this. When we were looking at populist scholarship, populist studies of Europe, they would say that there were two European countries that did not have populist movements: Iceland and Portugal. So this was, these are studies probably around 2018 or so. I think that's when Chega was just being formed, right along with Vox in Spain. And now, in just a matter of a couple of years, they're the youngest party in Portugal. They are poised to win the country. It's amazing, amazing stuff. You see, you're on the right side of it. See, it's not the progressive realists, it's the civilizationalists. We're on the right side of history. Our side of history goes all the way back, to the beginning, right? Egyptian civilization, Mesopotamian civilization, Chinese civilization, Indo-American civilization, Hindu civilization as well, Indian. So, forth. We are civilizationalists. The world moves and breathes and has its being in civilizational movement, civilizational spiral movement, where the future always is shaped and determined by the past, and where the present is a combination of both tradition, the tradition and technology and all that sort of stuff. So we're seeing it even in Portugal as well. I'm just yapping here. Sorry, William. Sorry. I didn't say the second one is the EU would just be dismantled. They would just get rid of it, which is what I would hope happens. Franz, the whole Nick Shirley thing smells a little like network society and neo-regionalism with a bit of archaeofuturism. Or am I standing in the wrong kitchen? You're awesome, Franz. All right, let's break these down. Well, I definitely see the network society, definitely. So he bypassed, if you guys don't know, the network society is the kind of social order that emerges through hyperconnectivity. So now we're all online, and it basically collapses space. So we can do things regardless of proximity. Back in the day, if I wanted to get into finance, I'd have to move to Wall Street. If I want to get into country music, I'd have to move to Nashville. If I want to get into the gambling industry, I'd have to move to Vegas, right? Because of the internet, because of hyperconnectivity, now I can get into finance. I can do country music. What's his name? Oliver Anthony, right? Oliver Anthony did not make it big in Nashville. He made it big on his back porch in rural Virginia because he had a webcam and a YouTube account, right? I can now with online gambling. What do I even need Vegas? Vegas is almost again becoming increasingly Jurassic. So our whole world is kind of moving into a new cyber civilizationalist realm, known most commonly as the internet, and it's catching all the old liberal industrial orders, institutions by surprise, most particularly the legacy media, because now via the internet we can bypass the legacy media the way email and texting bypasses the old post office. So that's what Nick Shirley did, and he brought the reality of the Somali fraud and just their absolute just the insulting element of it, calling us racist for even asking questions, right? He brought that to the world, right? Over 100. I think it's the first video was the most viewed video in X's history. It was just absolutely massive, went even beyond the United States. So definitely network society. Neo-regionalism. Now, I'm going to have to work that one out. Is it just because it's focusing on Minneapolis? Maybe that's what it is, and the center point is Minneapolis. You'd have to play that out, because that is an interesting interplay on how something so universal, as it were, as the internet, fits with neo-regionalism. Now, it does. It goes back to 2015 and China's statement on cyber civilization. It's the first time we saw that the internet can actually, up until 2015, we thought the internet was just going to be like the greatest globalist can opener ever. Everybody was going to go globalist with the internet. And China in 2015, in their official statement, when they were building their firewall, their cyber firewall, that's when they made the claim, no, we're going to use the internet and hyperconnectivity in the network society for distinctively Chinese and Confucian purposes. We're not going to be globalized by this. We're not going to be westernized by this. We're going to use this, what's technically known as the noosphere, right? You've got your geosphere, the rock of the planet, your biosphere, the life of the planet, and then you have the noosphere. Comes from the Greek word from mind, nous, the noosphere, where you literally have the crystallization of the human mind around networks. And we're going to use that mind for a distinctively Chinese cosmovision. So there is no contradiction whatsoever between the universality of the internet and sort of a neo-regionalism, civilizationalism, depending how far you want to bring that re-territorialization down, right? there is no more of a conflict between that and civilizationalism and the biosphere, right? We're all breathing the same air, but we'll breathe it as Confucians, and others will breathe it as Hindus, and others will breathe it as Shinto and Christian, Islamic and the like. So that's interesting. I'd have to see what you meant by neo-regionalism and also archaeofuturism. I don't know. I clearly, we clearly are seeing an archaeofuture world. Just where Nick Shirley's latest video would fit into that, you'd have to tease that out for me, but I'm sure I would agree. Big balls, McElroy. Oh my, you guys are the best. The Democrats are promoting a civil war to disrupt all investigations into their thieving tax. So that is the major theory. I think the most practical operative theory here in the end is that they're just trying to cover up the fraud. The problem with that thesis is that only works is if they were able to if the federal government were not able to walk and chew gum at the same time, if solving and putting down the uprising and the unrest distracted them from the fraud investigations. Yes, what we're finding is that the more federal agents coming in to Minneapolis, the more arrests, busts, the more uncovering of this fraud it becomes. Because remember, every federal agency, literally everyone, is involved right now. This thing just blew up so big that they lost control of it. I think they thought they could control it, but they can't anymore. I mean, that's dead. But every federal, so DOJ is involved. Agriculture is involved because it involved food. What's left of the Department of Education, Linda McMahon said, we need to teach them how to spell, right? Because these are learning centers, right? I mean, think about how preposterous that is. And has one legacy media outlet even remotely asked the question, how on earth did you give money to a learning company that didn't even know how to spell learning? But regardless, you've got Health and Human Services, obviously, because of the welfare issues. You've got the Treasury Department involved because of money wiring and tax evasion. You've got the SEC involved because it involves cross-state operations. I mean, literally everyone is involved in this, and they all have a vested interest in prosecuting and punishing everyone involved. So they're shot. Yes, they're going to try to do all the unrest they can, keep the fraud off the front page. Then we have Nick Shirley. Right? It's an old playbook that just doesn't work anymore. Nick Roof, Iliak. How does Mongolia remain unmolested when it's pinned between the biggest bullies in Asia? That's interesting you asked that question. Because they've had their own Trump. It was the judo wrestling champion who was the president previously to this one. He was called the Mongolian Trump. And yeah, I mean, they are landlocked. They are situated between China and Russia and India and all. Yeah, it's geopolitics, man. It's just you have to play, you have to dance, and never got into the specifics of it. Mongolia, for me, the big thing is their demographics. Is they're having a huge demographic explosion. I think they have an average of 3.1 children per couple. You have to confirm that. But it's largely because of the retraditionalization that they're going through in Mongolia. Religion is very, very important in Mongolian life, and whenever we see religious commitments, we see high fertility rates. Religion is the most accurate predictive indicator for fertility rates. The lack thereof or the strength thereof will tell you whether your fertility is drying up or if it's flourishing. So, but good question. I think it's really, in the end, it's just their geopolitical skill. William, there should be special exams for anyone going into public office. Type A narcissism being grounds for disqualification. I think you're onto something. Again, we would use the studies of Lobachevsky as our defense here. We do not want psychopaths in power. Ruby Hove, enjoy how you break down the information. Well, thank you, Ruby. Very kind of you. Thank you. No, I live by a maxim that I came across as a classical educator for a number of years. I was in classical education for 20 years. And it was from C.S. Lewis. And he said, if you can't break things down to the level of a child, if you can't take whatever you're trying to explain and explain it at a level where a child can understand it, you don't understand it. There are holes, there are gaps in your understanding. So I've always taken that to heart. I thought that was a wonderful way. That was a wonderful goal in my own drive to understand things and understand the world and civilization and culture, custom, tradition, religion, politics. Yeah, but no matter how I understand it, I do not want to understand it at a level that stops with the PhD lecture hall. I've never been that interested in that. Never. I've always enjoyed bringing it into the level of conversation. And, but it has the double effect of not only being able to be spread far more widely, but also I understand it far deeper and better to do that. So that's the irony. The irony is the easier you can explain something, the better and deeper you understand it. Franz, Dr. Steve, you have officially arrived. As I saw someone using one of your videos as a reference for their own analysis. Congratulations. Well, thank you, Franz. Let me know who that is. I'd love to say thank you to them as well. That's awesome. That's great. We've arrived, Franz. We've arrived. How could I do this without you guys? I can't do this without you guys. We're a team. I can't do it. If it were just me, I would be in a classroom right now. Yeah, and God bless everybody in a classroom, but that's I wouldn't be out and about. I would just be kind of hidden in a library. But because of you, I get to share this with the world, and so. It's us, Franz, you and me. Renaudio, I love it. Since Omar hates America, why is she allowed to stay in Congress? Will she be deported? She is against our Constitution. We'll have to see. I mean, she's got to watch out. To be honest with you, again, I think a lot of these Democrats really, honestly, enculturated them. They were groomed to use a nice choice of words to think that they were untouchable. Again, that's why you got into Democrat politics. In fairness, Republican politics as well. But you were untouchable. You're above the law. You were the lawmaker. You make laws for everybody else, and then you exempt yourself from it, and then you make sure the world is reconfigured in such a way where not only you, but usually your donors are above the law as well. So she comes with a lot of cockiness, and of course, she's never faced an actual in-depth interview in her life with the legacy media, and she wouldn't go on Fox ever or anything like that. So she gets puffball questions. She has this inbred confidence, but funny choice of words there, Freudian slip. But she, nevertheless, she needs to be very careful, because if this thing goes full, Insurrection Act, all bets are off. All bets are off for politicians as well. They have to be very careful. Once the president starts using the military, well, you don't know where that ends. So, Franz, can we make Cuba the Hong Kong of Latin America? Or is that a bridge too far? Well, I think that was the idea originally. During the days of what's his name, Hemingway and all. I think that was the idea. I mean, it was a place where the rich and famous would escape to and enjoy, and there's a lot of nightlife, casinos, all that kind of stuff. And then Castro used that as resentment politics, right, among the people, to try to convince them that they were being exploited by American imperialists and so on. Look, the days of the communist regime in Cuba over. You're going to continue to see so-called communist regime. I don't even think you see, I mean, outside of Mamdani, right, attempting to try to resurrect it in all of its Leninist glory. But China right now is more Singaporean in its economy. It is not even remotely Marxist. They will call themselves Confucian. The CCP is a very structured, authoritarian society, as a Singapore in its own way. But it is all about making money. It's all about technology, industry, investment. I agree with the line of scholarship with North Korea. I don't see North Korea as Marxist. I don't see it as communist per se. Again, it tended to use that garb, but it's actually much more rooted in Japanese emperor worship. It's more cultic in that sense. I don't mean that disparagingly. I mean that, just in the sense that the emperor cult has been a very popular form of government, going all the way back like to the Egyptian Empire, the Roman Empire, where the emperor is worshipped as a god. He's the embodiment of the gods in time and space, and his benevolence promises peace and prosperity for you. So it seems to me that, having been occupied by Japan for so many years, that Korea, particularly North Korea, learned more to think of itself in terms of Japanese, fascist imperialism than an emperor worship than it did Lenin or Stalin or Marx, or Engels for that matter. So I just see communism as pretty much dead. Modernity is dead. Liberalism is dead. And so the world is becoming civilizationalist. So it's only a matter of time before Cuba throws away this stupid hangover from the 19th and 20th century. And as we're seeing now more and more with the upcoming election, Colombia looks like it's going to be a blowout for the so-called far right. Bolivia, we're seeing it everywhere. The world is returning back to civilizationalism, and Marxism doesn't really play much of a role, because Marxism by definition is universalism. It's its own form of globalism. Remember, that's what the 20th century was. The 20th century was a standoff between three titans that each claimed to be modernity's heir, or the modernity's representative. Modernity was an 18th century movement, Enlightenment movement, that argued that there was a one-size-fits-all political and economic system for all people's times and places. And the 19th century worked itself out, and in early 20th century worked that out in terms of liberal democracy, Soviet communism, and Nazi fascism. They battled each other out. And then when the Soviet Union fell in 1991, Frank Fukuyama came out and said, this is the end of history. All of human history now is culminated in liberal democracies and liberal globalism and the liberal international order. There is no longer any need to find another political and economic system. And Sam Huntington said, "You're a fool. You're an idiot. If you think that's what happened with the Soviet Union falling, you could not be more wrong. The world is rejecting modernity. It's rejecting liberalism. It's rejecting communism. It's rejecting fascism. It's rejecting all the isms. And it's returning to nation, culture, custom, tradition, religion. It's going back to race, region, tribe. That's where the world is going back. And then it's consolidating because of the consolidation dynamics of great power politics. It's inevitably consolidating around civilization states, core states that operate and govern their own civilizational spheres, very much like a sun governs its own solar system, as it were. So that's where we are. And just there's no place for a Fidel Castro, Karl Marx relic like Cuba. It just exists only because in the end, we allow it to exist. Steve, I'm from Minnesota. I attest these people are psychos. Thank you, Steve. Steve, good to hear from you, my friend. I did not know you were in Minnesota. I grew up in Connecticut. It ain't the Bahamas in Connecticut, but I've always, I'm looking at some of those videos. I'm like, number one, who would live in Minneapolis? Who would live in Minnesota? It's so cold. You're up in the Arctic. But it's beautiful. I've never been there. I've seen some incredibly extraordinary pictures of the lakes and lakefront properties and so forth. It is God's country, no question about it. But my, is it cold up there? Makes, I think, even Connecticut look warm by comparison. Thanks, Steve. I know they are crazy. Thanks, la. Thank you. 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 4. Thank you so much. And Steve trying to move out of Minnesota because of how horrible it is. I hear you a lot. So you're a leftugee. Yeah. And you're going to be one of the, you're going to make, I'm sure you're going to go to a red state and you're going to make it even redder. That's what we're finding lefugees are doing. You become Gandalf and saying, you shall not pass, to any kind of liberal left-wing nut that's trying to run for Senate or governor or whatever there. This is one of the reasons why Texas, Arizona, Tennessee, Florida, North Carolina, they're all becoming deeper red because lefugees are moving there. Whereas Indiana is just a milquetoast Mike Pence red, where there are no hardcore lefugees moving to it. Nobody's moving to Indiana. And so its redness is very placid and like I said, very milquetoast and very just very lazy. Whereas, Texas and Arizona and Florida and Tennessee and North Carolina, they are standing up for red state values like no other, because so many guys like you, lefugees, are moving there. Their Gandalfs are going. Todd, your thoughts on Dems baiting Trump to appear to be the dictator they brand him to be? I already talked to this one. Bat Boy, I love your enthusiasm and optimism, but no, but you can't have you have said before, protests are no bueno for incumbents. We are in trouble, aren't we? No. Protests are no bueno for incumbent. I don't think I've said that. I've said that during the Biden years, but because the incumbent was Democrat, they're not very good on a national level. They're not very good for. No, that's not me. That must have been a different, or you're not making that distinction. So protests, riots, and so forth are a disaster for the left. Just so there's a Princeton study that we have. I recall even the New Yorker published it, interestingly enough. I thought that was fascinating. This is during the George Floyd riots, where they said riots, particularly in cities, in urban areas, tend to be disastrous for the federal national politics of the left, because people want law and order, so they go to the right. So if the left is the incumbent, they're in big trouble. If the right's the incumbent, no, they get even more support. And remember, Trump came within 40,000 votes of winning an election he was supposed to lose by 10 points. So, it's I think it's a pretty I think it's a pretty predictable pattern at this point, that riots tend to hurt the left and unite the right. Paula Meads, can you touch on what you think is in store for the upcoming Davos meeting? It's good. So I believe Trump will be there. I will catch up to that. I have not caught up. I did not see what their agenda is. Other than I just think Davos at this point just is, again, it's talk about a hangover, talk about a lag. There's the world that they tried to create just doesn't exist anymore. It did for a while, but even the New York, right? The Gretas and all that, Greta Thunbergs and the Obamas and just the Biden, the Al Gores, the social credit based, green based world order just doesn't exist anymore. Not on the level that they're hoping for. Because remember, all they're trying to do in the end is they want to be the new Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts, and they want to, just the way Rockefeller and Vanderbilt were at the right place when oil was struck and railroad technology was was coming about, so that they were the reason why they had so much money is they basically were the modern industrial world. They were at the foundation of the modern industrial world. They were the equivalent of, the first real estate developers in Manhattan or something. Think about that, right? So they just want to do that, but they're trying to orchestrate it. They're trying to orchestrate the new world that they want to be at the beginning of. And that's the Green New Deal. That's the greenification of the world, and then they use the social credit scores to enforce that and force consumers to purchase and to spend as these social engineers see fit. And then they become your first trillionaires, because they're all, Al Gore got into this, right? His net worth, if I recall, has gone up over 1,000% since he wrote his book, Earth in the Balance. So because he invested in all the green energy that he knew the WEF was going to be aligning with governments to mandate. So I'll have to see. I'm going to have to look, because that world just doesn't exist anymore. Steve, Somali state fraud, Minnesota ballot harvesting. Yeah. Minnesota's, it's funny too. If you've lived all your life in Minnesota, it may be worth fighting for over the next year or two, just to see before you decide to move. Because it is, Minnesota votes to the right of Jersey. Minnesota votes to the right of Virginia. Trump came within 3 or 4 points of winning Minnesota. So Minnesota has a very strong conservative base, just as you bear witness, Steve. It's just, you got to clean up all the corruption. And definitely the Minnesota ballot harvesting would be a perfect example of that. Lester Gore and Dr. Steve, can you please explain what's going to happen to the Clintons for not showing up to the Epstein hearing? We will see. I do believe that's an interesting one that you bring up. I do believe this could be a make or break for the Republicans. We will see. If there are no consequences for them doing exactly what Steve Bannon did and Peter Navarro did, and if they were arrested and they had to spend jail, but these two don't have to, there are no consequences at all, then the Republicans have proved that the Democrats own D.C., the Republicans only rent. And they are no longer fit for purpose. And I do think at some point we're going to have to talk about, like we're seeing in Britain, a third party. The Republicans are just, they're just bought and paid for shills for the establishment. And again, the good news is that the Republican Party and the MAGA and MAGA are one and the same when it comes to the rank and file, when it comes to the grassroots. But when it comes to the establishment, they are if they don't play if they refuse to play by the rules that we demand, which is quid pro quo in the best sense of the term, a dialectic, you hit us, we hit you twice as hard back. You've got to have that for deterrence, or else they're just going to keep hitting you. I met a person who said, just drove me crazy. Just Republicans, I tell you. But I met somebody at a fundraiser, and she was absolutely livid that Trump would try to pressure the Republicans getting rid of the filibuster. And she said, do you know, just somebody who's, she was woman-splaining to me, femme-splaining. Do you know how important the filibuster is to our Republican form of government? Do you know how much bad legislation we've been able to prevent because of that filibuster? And I just smiled and I said, sure, of course, yes. And do you not realize we're in a war with a rabid zombie lunatic psychopathic movement that wants to destroy our country? The filibuster is the least of our worries. And if that filibuster is standing in the way of us crushing this anti-American movement, then we should probably get rid of it. No, we still have to have principles. And I just went so let me get this straight. here's what we still have to have principles. Here's how it translates. Very easy. There was no convincing. Again, we're past persuasion, but for you guys, it's easy, right? Democrats get into power and they can jail us, they can prosecute us, they can indict us, they can lie about us, they can literally shoot us, right? Like on J6. They can do all of that. But then when we get into power, we say, well, we're above that. We're not going to descend to your level. We have principles. So the Democrat says, oh, okay, so when I'm in power, I can beat the shit out of you all I want. Then when you get into power, you're going to allow me to deliberate with you. I'm going to face no consequences whatsoever. And then if I get back into power, I get to beat the shit out of you again. Sign me up. I'll become a Democrat tomorrow. Sign me up. Great. You've got to have deterrent. Politics is about power, and it's not about freaking principles. For gosh sake, the level of ignorance here. I get it. There was a time where we in our schools where we did talk about, there is something beautiful about our politics. Our politics are very ideal, as our founding fathers recognize. But by the same token, they also recognize you had to have a distribution of power. You had to have a distribution of power. You had to have an Article 1, an Article 2, and an Article 3. Why? Because politics is about power. And they knew it. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. They knew it. It could not all be in the hands of one person or one legislator or one judge or series of judges or what have you, or group of judges. Politics is about power. Principles mean nothing. And this is what I actually said to her. I said, well, your principles mean nothing if you don't have the power to institute them. Yeah, well, at least we go down with our principles in time. Oh, okay. All right. So while we're all enslaved in our neck chains, we can all talk about, yeah, but boy, we had those principles, didn't we? I mean, give me an effing. Are we in a war or are we not? What's Steve Bannon say at Amerifest, right? We are in a war. This is a war. This is a real bona fide political war. And so anyway, we will have, if Republicans do not fight fire with fire, if they do not institute deterrence and say, oh, you made Steve Bannon, you made one of the chief advisors to the president, perp walk. Okay, great. We're going to make a former president's wife perp walk. We're going to make a former Secretary of State perp walk. No problem. No problem whatsoever. You hit us, we hit you double. And I think they both should be arrested and sent to prison immediately. I don't even know why we're having the conversation. So we'll see. We'll see if they do the right thing. Kasperius, the EU SSR kicked us out of Europe. This would be if the EU SSR kicked us out of Europe, this would be a great thing. It would be harder to send assets to Middle East and make it harder for 20 years. Well, absolutely. I'm with you. It's an old globalist, liberal, international order arrangement that we built up, via the Marshall Plan and so on. And no, I'm with you. I don't. Russia can have it as far as at least Eastern Europe. I mean, I just at this point, the globalists and the bullies in Brussels have just outlived their usefulness. Python, this channel is my learning center. Thank you, Python. Thank you. Mine too. Mine too. Again, we do this together. It's because of you guys. I mean, I get up each morning, doing my studies, doing my research. Doing my reading, and just share with you what we're finding, and it's neat stuff. I think what makes our channel unique and helpful is that I try to make the analysis as descriptive as possible rather than prescriptive. A lot of channels tell you what ought to be. Well, Trump should do this. Trump should do that, and Europe should do this. Yeah. And I tend to focus on, I see the reality that's unfolding in the events that are happening as itself the drama. As we move from an old liberal globalist age that has died to now a new civilizationalist age that is rising, and it's becoming increasingly cosmic with astropolitics and the politics of satellites and space stations and terraforming and on the moon, and possibly if Elon has it with Saturn, and all that that's going on, the rise of the internet, the noosphere. So I find the new world that's rising just incredibly vibrant and exciting. And so I try to focus on what's actually happening. I try to be as descriptive as possible rather than prescriptive. Gets me in trouble sometimes because, again, like with what happened in the special military operation February 2022 with Russia and Ukraine, we got a lot of people on this channel go, hey, why aren't you going rah Ukraine? It's like, it's more complex than that. You have to understand we're not a liberal globalist order anymore, liberal international order, where NATO gets to basically do whatever it wants as the force that enforces that order. It doesn't get to do. Now it's getting challenged by China, by Russia, by India, and to a certain extent, Turkey. It's getting pushed back. And what happened with Putin is that was part of the pushback. And he warned. It wasn't as if he didn't warn. And you go, oh, he's just trying to create the Soviet Union. Oh, he's just trying to expand. What if he goes into Poland? So you don't get it. So the expansionist rhetoric is pushing the notion that the liberal international order is on the side of justice, fairness, goodness. That's progressive realism. You're being a liberal when you talk that way. But a lot of conservatives did. So I just had to say, that's not what's happening. I'm Orthodox, so I hate the fact that two Orthodox countries are fighting each other. I may be 100% behind Ukraine, but I can't turn around and become a cheerleader that shows off progressive realist frames of reference, liberal international globalist frames that I think are dead. I can't. I have to analyze it as a civilizationalist. And when I analyze a civilization, it comes out very different. So that's what I think our channel tries to do. We do try to be as descriptive as possible. And then when we find that when we're describing the world as it is, as it's unfolding, as it's emerging, it is pretty exciting stuff. Used to be naive, 357. Love it. Thank you. Used to be naive. An audio. Oh, we're going to have to say, Brother Steve, can you please help me understand how it is that people who hate and betray our nation can stay in Congress in this country like Omar and the squad? Yeah, I know. I guess, I guess in a sense, our founding fathers would say, look, you can hate the country. You're free. This is part of the freedom of speech. It's part of the freedom of expression. I guess I'm just trying to think of it in the best way I can. You are free to hate the country. But hopefully there are enough people who love it to keep you on the periphery and marginalized. But I particularly Omar, she has to be very, very careful. I mean, everyone's talking about her and her brother at this point. Yeah, I mean, in the White House, Fox News was talking about it. I mean, everybody's talking about it. So if they could prove, if they got the papers for it, again, it's hard to prove apparently, given the lack of like birth certificates and stuff in Somali society, but third world country. But anyway, we'll have to see. Tubby, the U.S. immigration system is obviously broken. How would you fix it? I think it's time we cap off legal immigration. Yeah, that's what Pat Buchanan was arguing back in '96. He just said we have to put a moratorium on immigration, which we've done several times in our history. And I'd be all for that. No problem at all. You could still give green cards. You could still, you could do very practical things, people getting married or something. Again, my wife is from Japan. We went through the legal process 30 years ago or so, or however long it was. This is why she hates illegal migrants. So not migrants per se, but she hates illegal migration so much because, they just cut in front of the line. And then they turn around and tell you that they had a moral right to do that. F you. No, you don't. Get out of here. So, no, I'm with you. I'd go with that. I'd go with a moratorium. Sloopin, huge Albertan fan here. I know you do informative long-form content, but Alberta Separation could use a short, information-rich, well-edited, fast facts video to go viral. So big reactors like Osmond Gold see. Yeah, Sloopin, I've done several videos on the Alberta Prosperity Project and the independence movement. And I think we've got a few shorts on that as well. So you might want to check our channel or check our Facebook page, Dr. Steve Turley Facebook page, and see what you can find on that. We should have a few. It's me, BW. How do you think Iran will affect the midterms? Well, there was so there's a concern from people like Mark Mitchell over at Rasmussen and Rich Barris, the People's Pundit, Robert Barnes, that we first started seeing Trump's poll numbers go down shortly after the June strike in Iran. And the concern was it was not the Fox News crowd that was losing faith in Trump. It was the low to no prop voter, the independent populist, the disaffected independent populist voter who was beginning to lose faith. Working class, white, non-white, Latino voters, Gen Z men. They were afraid he was turning into George Bush 2.0. Now, that seems to have turned around because there was a concern that Barris and Mitchell found among the electorate that they were polling, that Trump was more interested in the Middle East than he was in the middle class. He was more interested in foreign policy than he was in food prices. Now that the economy is starting to hum, now that inflation is down dramatically from anything we've seen in the last 5 years, now that fuel prices are down, food prices going down, you'll notice affordability is not a big issue for Democrats anymore. And so the argument is that the more they feel the effects of the golden age economy, the less they're going to feel Trump is ignoring them. So then he can walk and chew gum at the same time. He can be very aggressive with Iran, who he wants to see gone. Again, he sees it as a hangover during the Cold War era. And many Iranians do as well. They want to return to the Shah. The Shah is their bridge between the Persian Empire and the Islamic age. And they're both. They see themselves as the great inheritors of a Zoroastrian Persian empire that the mullahs are doing everything they can to kind of erase. They don't want them to. They think that's idolatry, pagan idolatry. So they want the Shah, who's named Pahlavi. The family name is Pahlavi, named after the ancient Persian script that was used during the era of the Persian Empire. And they want him back as the bridge to their ancient roots so they can move forward into the future with their identity intact. And so Trump would like to see that. And he would like to see the mullahs gone. And he would like to see the Shiite crescent. He would like to see the Shiite crescent in the Middle East damaged, or at least very, what's the word I want to use? Very docile. So that's Hezbollah. It's the Houthis in Yemen. Hamas is part of that, though they tend to be Sunni, as I understand it. That's the Shiites in Iraq. That Shiite crescent has been very aggressive and very anti-American, and Trump wants to pacify that, bring in the Abrahamic Accords as a full-orbed, vibrant Middle Eastern policy where Jew, Muslim, and Christian together work toward common goals rooted in a common ancestry in Abraham. And the Shiites are standing very much against that right now, as is ISIS, and on the other side, on the Sunni side. But even the new Syrian president is all for it. And of course, Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia is all for it. The UAE is all for it. Qatar is all for it. They want the Abraham Accords. They want money. They want the Middle East to become, the literally the Riviera of the region. So anyway, at this point, I don't think it's going to affect it much, as long as cost of living continues to go down for us all. Thank you so much, SC400 Pilot. Thank you. It's me, BW. That's what teased me off about our side. So many of us think it's about principle. To be honest, I'd be fine with Trump fortifying things. Dempster, I'm with you. I'm. It's me, BW. I'm with you. I'm like, why do we keep complaining about cheating? Why do we complain? Now, I think we need to eradicate it on the other side, but I think we should fortify our elections. Let's just say that. Yes, I agree. Franz, think archeo as in the old guard's investigative technique of knocking on doors with a fist, and the futurism of recording the result as a phone. I told you I'd agree with you. I told you, Franz. I told you I'd agree. That's brilliant. Yeah, old school, on the beat, right? Pounding the pavement, investigative journalism. You got it. I love it. I didn't even think about that. And you're absolutely right. And then presented to the world via the network society. Archeo Future. Love it. And there you go. All right, guys, stay tuned. I got more videos coming your way. As your back porch professor, I tend to do my videos over the weekend from my back porch. So keep an eye out for that. But until then, love you guys. Stay safe. Love your families. Love your God. And let's continue to make America great. God bless.